Bridge to Terabithia, Chapter 3. The fastest kid in the 5th grade. Jess didn't see Leslie Burke again, except from a distance, until the first day of school, the following Tuesday, when Mr. Turner brought her down to Mrs. Meyer's 5th grade class at Lark Creek Elementary. Leslie was still dressed in the faded cutoffs and the blue undershirt. She had sneakers on her feet, but no socks. Surprise swooshed up from the class like steam from a released radiator cap. They were all sitting there, primly dressed in their spring Sunday best. Even Jess wore his one pair of corduroys and an iron shirt. The reaction didn't seem to bother her. She stood there in front, her eyes saying, "Okay, friends, here I am," in answer to their open-mouthed stares, while Mrs. Myers fluttered about, trying to figure out where to put the extra desk. The room was a small basement one, and 5 rows of 6 desks already filled it more than comfortably. 31, Mrs. Myers kept mumbling over her double chin. 31. No one else has more than 29. She finally decided to put the desk up against the side wall near the front. "Just there for now, Leslie. It's the best we can do for now. This is a very crowded classroom." She swung a pointed glance at Mr. Turner's retreating form. Leslie waited quietly until the 7th grade boy, who'd been sent down with the extra desk, scraped it into position hard against the radiator and under the first window. Without making any noise, she pulled it a few inches forward from the radiator and settled herself into it. Then she turned once more to gaze at the rest of the class. 30 pairs of eyes were suddenly focused on desktop scratches. Jess ran his forefinger around the heart with 2 pairs of initials, BR plus SK, trying to figure out whose desk he had inherited. Probably Sally Koch's. Girls did more of the heart stuff in 5th grade than boys. Besides, BR must be Billy Rudd, and Billy was known to favor Myrna Hauser last spring. Of course, these initials might have been here longer than that, in which case, Jessie Aaron's, Bobby Gregg's, pass out the arithmetic books, please. On the last word, Mrs. Myers flashed her famous first day of school smile. It was said in the upper grades that Mrs. Myers had never been seen to smile except on the first and the last day of school. Jess roused himself and went to the front. As he passed Leslie's desk, she grinned and rippled her fingers low in the kind of wave. He jerked a nod. He couldn't help feeling sorry for her. It must be embarrassing to sit in front when you find yourself dressed funny on the first day of school, and you don't know anybody. He slapped the books down as Mrs. Myers directed. Gary Fulcher grabbed his arm as he went by. "Gonna run today?" Jess nodded. Gary smirked. "He thinks he can beat me, the dumbhead." At the thought, something jiggled inside Jess. He knew he was better than he had been last spring. Fulcher might think he was going to be the best, now that Wayne Pettis was in 6th, but he, Jess, planned to give old Fulcher a little surprise come noon. It was as though he had swallowed grasshoppers. He could hardly wait. Mrs. Myers handed out books almost as though she were President of the United States, dragging the distribution process out in senseless signings and ceremonies. It occurred to Jess that she, too, wished to postpone regular school as long as possible. When it wasn't his turn to pass out books, Jess sneaked out a piece of notebook paper and drew. He was toying with the idea of doing a whole book of drawings. He ought to choose one chief character and do a story about it. He scribbled several animals and tried to think of a name. A good title would get him started. The Haunted Hippo? He liked the ring of it. Herbie the Haunted Hippo? Even better. The Case of the Crooked Crocodile? Not bad. "What you drawing?" Gary Fulcher was leaning way over his desk. Jess covered the page with his arm. "Nothing." "Ah, come on, let me see." Jess shook his head. Gary reached down and tried to pull Jess's hand away from the paper. "The Case of the Crooked—" "Come on, Jess," he whispered hoarsely. "I ain't gonna hurt nothing." He yanked at Jess's thumb. Jess put both arms over the paper and brought his sneaker heel crashing down on Gary Fulcher's toe. "Yow! Boys!" Mrs. Myers' face had lost its lemon pie smile. "He stomped my toe." "Take your seat, Gary." "But he—" "Sit down. Jessie Aaron's, one more peep from your direction and you can spend recess in here, copying the dictionary." Jessie's face was burning hot. He slid the notebook paper back under his desktop and put his head down. A whole year of this. 8 more years of this. He wasn't sure he could stand it. The children ate lunch at their desks. The county had been promising Lark Creek a lunchroom for 20 years, but there never seemed to be enough money. Jess had been so careful not to lose his recess time that even now he chewed his bologna sandwich with his lips tight shut and his eyes on the initialed heart. Around him, conversations buzzed. They were not supposed to talk during lunch, but it was the first day, and even Monster-Mouth Myers shot fewer flames on the first day. She's eating clabber. 2 seats from where he sat, Mary Lou Peoples was at work being the second snottiest girl in the 5th grade. Yogurt, stupid. Don't you watch TV? This from Wanda K. Moore, the snottiest, who sat immediately in front of Jess. Yuck. Lord, why couldn't they leave people in peace? Why shouldn't Leslie Burke eat anything she darn pleased? He forgot that he was trying to eat carefully and took a loud slurp of his milk. Wanda Moore turned around, all priss-face. Jess Aarons, that noise is pure repulsive. He glared at her hard and gave another slurp. You are disgusting. Bring the recess bell. With a yelp, the boys were pushing for first place at the door. The boys will all sit down. Oh, Lord. While the girls line up to go out to the playground, ladies first. The boys quivered on the edges of their seats like moths fighting to be free of cocoons. Would she never let them go? All right, now if you boys... They didn't give her a chance to change her mind. They were halfway to the end of the field before she could finish her sentence. The first 2 out began dragging their toes to make the finish line. The ground was rutted from past rains, but had hardened in the late summer drought, so they had to give up on sneaker toes and draw the line with a stick. The 5th grade boys, bursting with new importance, ordered the 4th graders this way and that, while the smaller boys tried to include themselves without being conspicuous. How many you guys gonna run? Gary Fulcher demanded. Me, everyone yelled. That's too many. No 1st, 2nd, or 3rd graders, except maybe the Butcher cousins and Timmy Vaughn. The rest of you will just be in the way. Shoulders sagged, but the little boys backed away obediently. Okay, that leaves 26, 27, stand still, 28. You get 28, Greg, Fulcher asked Greg Williams, his shadow. Right, 28. Okay, now, we'll have eliminations like always. Count off by 4s. Then we'll run all the 1s together, then the 2s. We know. Everyone was impatient with Gary, who was trying for all the world to sound like this year's Wayne Pettis. Jess was a 4, which suited him very well. Well enough. He was impatient to run, but he really didn't mind having a chance to see how the others were doing since spring. Fulcher was a 1, of course, having started everything with himself. Jess grinned at Fulcher's back and stuck his hands into the pockets of his corduroys, wriggling his right forefinger through the hole. Gary won the first heat easily and had plenty of breath left to boss the organizing of the second. A few of the younger boys drifted off to play King of the Mountain on the slope between the upper and lower fields. Out of the corner of his eye, Jess saw someone coming down from the upper field. He turned his back and pretended to concentrate on Fulcher's high-pitched command.